The political landscape is ablaze once again, and this time, the battleground is Maine. Governor Janet Mills has signed an executive order strengthening protections for transgender student athletes. This act has ignited controversy, putting Maine in the crosshairs of former President Donald Trump. Trump vows to challenge the order in court, setting the stage for a high-stakes legal showdown. This clash is about more than sports. It's a microcosm of the larger cultural war over identity and equality. The outcome could have a ripple effect across the country, impacting the fight for transgender rights. One thing is certain, the fight for transgender equality is far from over. Governor Mills' executive order is not merely symbolic, it carries the weight of law. The order reinforces and clarifies existing Maine law, ensuring that transgender student athletes are explicitly protected from discrimination. It affirms their right to participate in school sports in a manner consistent with their gender identity, removing any ambiguity or room for misinterpretation. The order's language is clear and unambiguous. It states that no student shall be excluded from participating on a school sports team on the basis of gender identity. This means that transgender girls are allowed to compete on girls' teams, and transgender boys are allowed to compete on boys' teams, in line with their self-identified gender. This move is significant because it goes beyond simply acknowledging the existence of transgender students. It actively protects their right to participate in school sports without facing discrimination or being forced into categories that don't align with their gender identity. For many transgender youth, sports are more than just games. They provide a sense of belonging, camaraderie, and an outlet for physical and emotional well-being. By issuing this executive order, Governor Mills has sent a powerful message that Maine is a state where all students are valued and respected, regardless of their gender identity. This action aligns with the growing movement across the country to create more inclusive and equitable spaces for transgender youth, recognizing that their rights are human rights, deserving of protection and respect. Donald Trump's opposition to Maine's executive order comes as no surprise. Throughout his time in the political spotlight, he has consistently taken aim at transgender rights, rolling back protections, and using inflammatory rhetoric that has fueled discrimination and prejudice. His latest attack on transgender athletes is just the latest example of his long-standing animosity towards the transgender community. One of Trump's most egregious actions was his attempt to ban transgender individuals from serving in the military. This discriminatory policy, announced via Twitter in 2017, sent shockwaves through the LGBTQ+ community and sparked widespread condemnation from human rights groups and military leaders alike. While the ban faced numerous legal challenges and was ultimately blocked by the courts, it served as a stark reminder of Trump's willingness to use transgender people as political pawns. Trump's assault on transgender rights extended beyond the military. During his presidency, his administration rolled back protections for transgender students in schools, revoked guidance on bathroom access, and attempted to define gender as a biological absolute, erasing the lived experiences of transgender and non-binary individuals. His attacks on transgender rights are not just about policy, they are about sending a clear message to his base. By framing transgender rights as a threat to traditional values and women's sports, Trump is tapping into a deep well of fear and prejudice, galvanizing his supporters, and further dividing the nation along cultural and ideological lines. Section 4. The Gathering Storm. Legal challenges on the horizon. The battle lines have been drawn, and the legal challenges promised by Donald Trump loom large. His vow to take legal action against Maine's executive order signals his intent to wage war on transgender rights in the courtroom, setting the stage for a protracted legal battle with potentially far-reaching consequences. Trump's legal strategy will likely center around the argument that Maine's executive order violates Title IX, the federal law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in education programs or activities that receive federal funding. He will likely argue that allowing transgender girls to compete on girls' sports teams gives them an unfair advantage and undermines the integrity of women's sports. This legal challenge, however, faces significant hurdles. The Supreme Court's landmark decision in 2020 established that discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity is a form of sex discrimination prohibited under Title IX. This ruling provides legal precedent for protecting transgender students from discrimination in schools, including in the realm of athletics. Furthermore, numerous medical and athletic organizations, including the American Medical Association and the NCAA, have affirmed the rights of transgender athletes to compete in accordance with their gender identity. They argue that there is no scientific basis for the claim that transgender girls have an inherent athletic advantage over cisgender girls, and that excluding transgender athletes from competition is discriminatory and harmful. Section 5. A Nation Divided. The Broader Political Battleground. The clash between Governor Mills and Donald Trump over transgender athletes' rights is not an isolated incident. It is a microcosm of a much larger battle playing out across the United States, a battle over the rights and recognition of transgender people that has become a central front in the ongoing culture war. Across the country, Republican-led legislatures have been waging an aggressive campaign to restrict the rights of transgender people, particularly transgender youth. These legislative attacks have focused on banning gender-affirming care for transgender minors, restricting transgender students' access to bathrooms and locker rooms that align with their gender identity, and most notably, barring transgender girls from participating in girls' sports. These bills, often framed as measures to protect children or preserve women's sports, are fueled by misinformation, fear-mongering, and a deep-seated prejudice against transgender people. They represent a concerted effort to roll back the hard-won progress made by the LGBTQ+ rights movement and to relegate transgender people to the margins of society. The political right has seized upon the issue of transgender athletes as a wedge issue, a way to mobilize their base and score political points. By framing transgender girls' participation in girls' sports as a threat to fairness in women's sports, they are tapping into deep-seated anxieties about gender roles and the changing cultural landscape.